In this structured biography, you will follow the life of Adolf Hitler from childhood to his final years. The purpose of this learning text is twofold: to understand the events and decisions that shaped one of history's most destructive figures, and to strengthen your English vocabulary, grammar, and reading comprehension through carefully crafted, academically oriented narrative sections. Each part presents factual information in a clear way, highlights personal habits and mistakes, and offers reflections that can help readers think critically about human behavior, responsibility, and the consequences of harmful ideologies. Let's begin. Part 1. Early childhood and family background. Adolf Hitler was born on April 20th, 1889, in Braun am Inn, a small town in Austria near the German border. His early family life was marked by instability, strict discipline, and conflict. His father, Adolf Hitler, was a customs official known for his authoritarian personality and rigid expectations. His mother, Clara Hitler, was gentle and caring, yet emotionally fragile due to repeated family tragedies and the loss of several children before Adolf. Hitler's childhood was shaped by the tension between these two parental figures. He often felt misunderstood and struggled with his father's demands that he pursue a stable civil service career. Instead, the young Adolf developed interests in drawing, daydreaming, and imagining a different future. He was a mediocre student who performed well only in subjects that interested him. His lack of discipline in school became one of the first signs of a habit that would follow him throughout life, avoiding sustained effort in activities he disliked. He experienced several relocations due to his father's changing jobs, which disrupted his education and contributed to his feelings of isolation. After the death of his younger brother Edmund, Adolf became more withdrawn and resentful. He felt increasingly disconnected from peers and teachers, forming the early patterns of alienation that would later influence his radical worldview. Although he dreamed of becoming an artist, Hitler lacked the academic preparation and constructive guidance needed to develop his abilities. His early years present valuable lessons about the importance of emotional stability, supportive environments, and responsible decision-making in youth. They also show how unresolved personal frustrations can evolve into destructive attitudes if left unchecked. Adolescence, aspirations, and early failures. Hitler's teenage years were marked by growing defiance toward authority and a deepening attachment to his artistic ambitions. He imagined himself living in Vienna as a painter, free from the structured career path his father demanded. After Alois died in 1903, Adolf felt relieved for what he saw as oppressive expectations. However, instead of using this moment to pursue disciplined development, he fell into habits of passivity and avoidance. His academic performance continued to decline. Although he enjoyed history and admired aspects of German culture, he lacked the perseverance needed to achieve long-term goals. Eventually, he dropped out of school before completing his studies, a decision that closed important doors and contributed to a pattern of blaming external forces for his disappointments. At age 16, he moved toward a lifestyle defined by imagination rather than action. He spent his days reading, sketching buildings, and creating grand personal fantasies. These habits reinforced a sense of self-importance that was disconnected from real achievements. When he attempted to apply to the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts, he faced two major rejections. These failures deeply affected him. Instead of practicing harder or seeking formal guidance, he developed resentment toward those he believed had power over his fate. During this period, Hitler also began absorbing harmful ideological influences present in the political climate of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He encountered extreme nationalism, cultural prejudice, and conspiracy theories that shaped his early worldview. His inability to cope with failure in a healthy way made him more vulnerable to these destructive ideas. This stage teaches important lessons about perseverance, humility, and the need to accept responsibility for one's setbacks. It also demonstrates how unaddressed grievances can lead an individual toward harmful directions. Vienna, poverty, radicalization, and personal hardships. After leaving school, Hitler moved to Vienna, where he faced the harsh realities of adult life. He arrived with grand artistic dreams, but the city confronted him with poverty, competition, and cultural diversity that challenged his assumptions. He lived in inexpensive hostels, struggled to earn a stable income, and experienced periods of hunger and homelessness. These years were marked by instability and hardship that could have fostered empathy and resilience. Instead, they intensified his bitterness. He earned money by painting postcards and small city scenes, but the income was irregular. This instability strengthened his habit of avoiding long-term responsibilities. Daily survival became his primary focus, and yet he still failed to build constructive relationships or seek steady employment. Favoring solitude, he spent hours reading political literature, nationalist writings, and pseudo-scientific arguments that distorted social and ethnic realities. Vienna's multicultural population challenged his rigid worldview. Instead of embracing diversity, he reacted to it with hostility. Growing ideological influences reinforced harmful beliefs, and his lack of positive social networks allowed these ideas to deepen unchecked. His frustrations and prejudices merged into a worldview shaped by resentment and a desire for a simplistic explanation of complex social problems. During this period, he also experienced the loss of his mother, which produced genuine grief but did not lead to emotional maturity. Instead, it became another emotional wound that he never processed fully. His Vienna years represent a turning point where early vulnerabilities hardened into destructive convictions. For English learners, this section provides rich vocabulary related to social conditions, psychology, and historical context, while emphasizing critical thinking about how difficult circumstances can shape but should not excuse dangerous ideologies. Munich in the First World War, purpose, conflict, and reinforcement of beliefs in 1913. Seeking a new direction and wanting to avoid military service in Austria, Hitler moved to Munich, Germany. Life in Munich initially offered a sense of cultural belonging that he felt Vienna lacked. However, his internal struggles and ideological rigidity remained unresolved. When the First World War began in 1914, Hitler saw the conflict as an opportunity to find purpose and recognition. He volunteered for the German army and served as a dispatch runner, a dangerous position that required carrying messages across the battlefield. During the war, he demonstrated persistence, endurance, and loyalty to his unit. These were qualities that, in a different life, might have contributed to more constructive achievements. Instead, the war environment strengthened his extremist beliefs. Witnessing the collapse of the German Empire and the hardships of defeat, he became increasingly convinced that Germany had been betrayed by internal enemies. This belief was not based on evidence, but on conspiratorial thinking widespread at the time. Hitler was wounded in battle and temporarily blinded by a gas attack near the end of the war. While recovering in a hospital, he learned of Germany's surrender. The news devastated him and intensified his desire for a powerful national revival. Instead of adopting a balanced perspective, he absorbed radical nationalist interpretations of the defeat. His wartime experience reinforced two dangerous patterns: the search for simple explanations for complex events and a belief in authoritarian solutions. These patterns would later define his political rise. For English learners, this part highlights vocabulary related to military life, psychology, and historical transitions, while presenting important lessons about critical evaluation, resilience, and the consequences of adopting rigid ideological frameworks. Entry into politics and the rise of the Nazi movement after the war, Germany faced economic chaos, political instability, and social unrest. Many individuals searched for direction, and extremist groups tried to exploit widespread frustration. Hitler joined the German Workers' Party, a small nationalist organization. His speaking ability and charismatic style allowed him to grow quickly within the group. Soon, he transformed it into the National Socialist German Workers' Party, Nazi Party. Despite his lack of formal education, Hitler practiced persuasive public speaking. However, his speeches were built on anger, fear, and distorted or false claims. This period shows how communication skills can be misused when not guided by ethical responsibility. He attracted people who felt disillusioned and promised them national unity, economic recovery, and restored pride. In 1923, he attempted a violent coup known as the Beer Hall Putsch. The effort failed, leading to his arrest. This event was a significant mistake, reflecting impatience and a belief in force over lawful processes. Yet during his prison sentence, he reorganized his strategy. He wrote Mein Kampf, a book outlining his extremist ideology. Instead of abandoning his harmful ideas, he refined them into a political plan. After his release, he rebuilt the Nazi Party through propaganda, organization, and manipulation of public emotions. Economic depression in 1929 further expanded his support, as many people sought desperate solutions. His rise demonstrates how economic fear and social instability can create opportunities for dangerous leaders. For learners, this section reinforces vocabulary related to politics, persuasion, and leadership, while emphasizing the importance of moral judgment and critical analysis. Seizing power and establishing a dictatorship in 1933, Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. Within months, he began dismantling democratic institutions. Through propaganda, intimidation, and political violence, he eliminated opposition parties, controlled the media, and centralized authority. His government built a system where loyalty to him replaced rule of law and respect for individual rights. Hitler cultivated an image of discipline and strength. Yet his leadership style relied heavily on coercion, manipulation, and the suppression of dissent. He surrounded himself with officials who competed for his approval, creating a chaotic yet ruthless environment. His personal habits, such as obsessive planning in some areas and reckless improvisation in others, contributed to erratic decision-making. One of the most destructive actions of his regime was the systematic persecution of Jews and other minority groups. Policies of segregation, violence, and eventually genocide were executed under his authority. These crimes were justified through racist ideology and propaganda that dehumanized entire populations. His refusal to confront reality, combined with his belief in ideological purity, led to catastrophic human suffering. This period demonstrates the dangers of unchallenged power, prejudice, and manipulation. Studying these events helps readers understand the responsibilities of citizens and leaders in preserving human rights and ethical governance. The Second World War, ambition, miscalculation, and catastrophe. Hitler's aggressive foreign policy led to the outbreak of the Second World War in 1939. Believing in rapid victories and the superiority of his strategic vision, he launched invasions across Europe. Initial military successes strengthened his overconfidence, but his strategic decisions soon became increasingly reckless. He ignored expert advice, underestimated opponents, and pursued ideological goals rather than rational strategies. The invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941 marked a turning point. Hitler's unrealistic expectations, combined with harsh winters and extended supply lines, caused devastating losses. His refusal to retreat or reconsider his plans resulted in massive casualties. Meanwhile, the regime intensified its genocidal policies, establishing extermination camps and expanding its crimes across occupied territories. As the war continued, Hitler became more isolated. He distrusted his generals, dismissed factual reports, and relied on wishful thinking. His leadership habits, rigidity, impatience, and impulsive decision-making accelerated Germany's defeat. By 1944, the war had turned decisively against him. Germany faced economic collapse, internal resistance, and overwhelming military pressure. This section highlights critical vocabulary relating to military strategy, psychology, and international conflict. The life lessons are powerful. Unchecked ambition, ideological fanaticism, and refusal to accept responsibility can lead to irreversible destruction. Final months collapse, and the end of his life by early 1945. Hitler's regime was collapsing. Allied forces closing from both the east and west. The country he once promised to elevate lay in ruins due to his decisions. Infrastructure was destroyed, millions were displaced, and the consequences of his crimes became undeniable. In Berlin, he withdrew into an underground bunker, isolated from reality and unwilling to acknowledge the scale of the disaster. His final months revealed the consequences of ignoring truth, surrounding oneself with fear-driven loyalty, and refusing to adapt. Recognizing that defeat was inevitable, he chose not to face responsibility. On April 30th, 1945, Adolf Hitler took his own life. His death did not end the suffering he caused, but it marked the collapse of a regime built on hatred, violence, and deception. For English learners, this section provides vocabulary related to historical decline, psychological collapse, and critical reflection. The overarching lesson from this stage is the importance of accountability, ethical leadership, and awareness of how individual choices affect society. The life of Adolf Hitler illustrates the extreme consequences of resentment, prejudice, misuse of power, and refusal to learn from failure. By studying his life, readers can develop a clearer understanding of history while improving their English step by step. The goal is not to admire his actions, but to learn from his destructive choices and strengthen our commitment to empathy, critical thinking, and responsible decision-making. Through this structured biography, you can expand your vocabulary, deepen your comprehension skills, and grow as a thoughtful learner while reflecting on the importance of ethical leadership and personal responsibility.